welcome to the Police and Crime Panel. I think we'll start by introductions. So, I'm Councillor Al Garthwaite and I'm Councillor from Leeds and I'm the Chair.
Morning everybody, I'm Councillor Nicole Sharp from Leeds Council.
Paul Sullivan, Councillor from Bradford.
Councillor Maureen Tennant from Wakefield Council.
Jo Sykes, independent member.
Councillor South Residence here from Bradford.
Fiona Bernardo, panel support.
Temporary Chief Superintendent, Sarah Page, Director of Corporate Services, West Yorkshire Police.
Catherine Hankinson, Deputy Chief Constable, West Yorkshire Police.
Alison Lowe, Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime, West Yorkshire.
Wendy Stevens, Research Manager and Support for Alison in this panel. Hi, Angela Taylor, Director of Corporate Commercial Services, Command Authority.
Julia Clough, Head of Commissioning Policing and Crime.
Julie Reid, Head of Policing and Crime.
Trevor Lake, Independent Member.
Councillor Anthony Smith from the Linwood and Kirk Police.
Yeah, Mohan Salkhan from Kerkly also.
Alex Sir, Wakefield Council, Legal Department.
Samantha Wilkinson, Police and Crime Panel Officer.
Thank you very much. Now we have quite a few apologies today. I understand the Chief Constable can't be with us, but people seem to be coming along. Very good to see you. We have apologies from Councillors Amanda Carter, Sarah Courtney, Andrew Cooper, Robert Thornburg and Councillor Usman Ali and Sinead Engel. So quite a few, however, we should nevertheless have a robust session. And Jo Sykes, you have to leave us at 11:20. So that's good. So we'll go straight through on to the approval of the minutes from the 4th of November. I did have (5.9), which is about the Ask Angela scheme, and I was wondering how many bars and clubs across the whole of West Yorkshire are now signed up to the scheme. I know that in Leeds, where I'm from, it's 605 at the last count.
Yeah, and thank you for the early indication at our meeting last week that you've asked this question. We have emailed the CSPs, we haven't had a response, so we can't give you an up-to-date figure at this meeting, but hopefully we will be able to, in due course, understand those on to you. But obviously Leeds is brilliant in its response, so we're really pleased that over 600 guys there have signed up.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's useful to keep track of this, and obviously the evaluations. I know that Leeds is having an evaluation starting in the new year, given that the scheme has now been running for a year, so that we'll be able to see what the uptake has been and whether any glitches in the system that can then be corrected. So, apart from that, I think that we were happy with the minutes. Yes?
Yep.
The panel approves the minutes in that case. Thank you. So, are there any urgent items that anyone wishes now to bring up? No. Any members have any declarations of interest? It's an opportunity for panel members to declare any interest on any items on the agenda. No personal interest, thank you. We'll go straight on then to this very important report on mental health. Do you want to give an introduction to this?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief introduction and some clarifications that were raised with us at our one-to-one. So first and foremost, the mental health is a key priority of the Mayor's Police and Crime Plan. We understand the impact this is having on policing, and clearly it's something that we want to have a focus on, not just now but into the future, and we understand that also there's some big changes coming, as outlined in the paper, that mean that we need to have some leadership around this, not just from policing but across the whole of the system. There were a few clarification questions raised in the Chair's briefing, which I'll just go through in case you were going to ask those questions. So under section 2.2, numbers of incidents, the 2,000 calls for service in the first paragraph where a call comes into the police where mental health issues are the main reason for the call. The second paragraph that says demand could be as high as 116,000 is a count of the calls which come in for another reason, maybe a missing person, and mental health issues are flagged as a factor. And this follows the HMIC FRS definition, which is that any police incident thought to relate to someone's mental health where their vulnerability is at the centre of the incident, or where the police have had to do something additionally or differently because of it. So that's the 116,000. We were also asked at 2.2 about what MORIL stands for, and that is Management of Risk in Law Enforcement, and that's a national standard for scoring risk. And if you want to know more, there's a .gov website that you can go and have a look at. 4.2 talks about innovative practice, which has been highlighted by HMIC FRS. Since you raised the clarification, we took that back to policing, and we were told that in each district there is a patrol hub, and in the hub there will be a hub inspector, often with a resourcing sergeant, and this is across West Yorkshire with the exception of Kirklees, which does not have a separate hub inspector. In the report, there's a reference to hubs as DCRs, and apparently that's not the case. Although DCRs are.
District control rooms, which used to be, they've just transferred the names of now because of the broader work they do.
Yeah. And then further updates have indicated that the hub inspector duties include dynamic risk assessments, which would include mental health triage and response, and that Leeds have had their funding withdrawn and no longer have mental health nurses in the hubs. So we need to understand, is that funding from the Mental Health Trust?
That's what we're not sure of, so you're going to ask something
Well,
we're going to take away.
Yeah, definitely. So because this is her area of expertise. And Bradford haven't had mental health nurses for some time, which obviously was all news to us because we thought that they were there. They do have a mental health car at peak times, which has a mental health nurse and a police officer, a bit like the deterrence cars that we have with youth services. And obviously it's not a preferred approach, so we're going to have to do a little bit more work back at the ranch to understand when that happened, why that happened, what we can do together to hopefully go back to the old arrangement, which was clearly a much better one. So that's the clarification that was asked at the last meeting, so happy to answer any more questions, and happily we've got the Deputy Chief Constable with us who has led on this area for some time and will be able to answer any technical questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was all really clear. We do indeed have some questions, and I'll go first of all to Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. It's about the mental health place of safety under 2.4. And then just to confuse you, 6.1 says that this is all going to happen end of this year. So the first question is that a calendar year or a financial year? Because we need to understand what the predicted numbers are so that the HSC partners can get a handle on capacity and can, what's the time frame for them to gain this capacity? We might have something in place already which is definitely going to do it, but I suspect we probably have to do more work. So, is it calendar year or financial year when this comes in?
I think it's calendar year, but we'll have to check.
So we're right up against it now?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, this is not a police decision. So we should start off by saying it's never been right for people who are in distress to be held in police cells. That's never been okay, that's never been acceptable, but it's been inevitable because of closures of mental health hospital beds over a very, very long period of time. You might remember I worked with mental health charity for nearly 20 years, and the loss of beds has had a massive impact across that system, but also it's impacted on blue light services like policing. And 70% of all, 99% of all, nothing to do with policing, they have a mental health or other element, so it's a big issue for policing. So it's a good thing that the rules are changing and people who are in distress allegedly are going to be supported in the right place, which is within their relevant mental health trust. The issue for us is that we know that there isn't capacity in the mental health trust. I was speaking to somebody in a local mental health trust yesterday who's told me that the situation is dire, and that's without this being in place.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping is that there's some urgent talks taking place at a senior level to understand how we're going to meet the new requirements. I suspect we won't meet the new requirements because I suspect that rather than see somebody without service and without safety, the police will step in again, even though we're not allowed to do that. I don't know what the consequences of that will be.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very ill thought out rule that's been applied without the necessary resources being applied. Catherine, would you like to add any more?
Yeah, just, I suppose for some clarity, there's two kind of almost separate things that run in parallel. So we don't bring, and haven't done for some time now, people into police cells where we section 136 them out in the public. They go straight to a place of safety that is not a police station anymore. So that's already in place. What sometimes happens is that people are brought into custody for a variety of different reasons, and then it becomes apparent that mental health is an issue whilst in custody. Then we have to then wait for certain doctors and procedures to take place to be able to say whether they need to have a mental health bed or not. And that's the thing that sometimes goes on longer than we would want it
Many
to.
hours.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's
Yes,
where,
perhaps.
after a certain period of time, we technically aren't allowed to keep people, but as Deputy Mayor says, might have to, because ultimately this should be a person-centred approach, and you know, we're ultimately looking after the safety of an individual.
See, this technically might have to rules opens up, it's just a bit like the lawfare against soldiers' decisions made by an 18-year-old 50 years ago, muck and bullets all over. Well, it's the same for police officers and custody staff, just that sort of thing. So I'm interested in safeguarding the individuals that we're talking about, but also your colleagues.
Yeah, and
Can
I
that
think
be part of the discussion? So I think we need to get the Federation involved with that as well.
So the Federation, I meet the Federation every quarter. Believe me, they're already involved. We have lots of conversations about mental health. And obviously the impact on officers of having to work with people who are very distressed. So I was in Trafalgar House 3 months ago, and they still have somebody in the cell that had been there for 3 days, and was behaving in all sorts of ways that were a presentation of his distress, and the people in the cells were having to, the staff in the cells were having to deal with that behaviour, which was shocking. But there were no beds for that person, there was no support for that person, and that's not going to change. It's going to get worse.
Yeah. So I think we very much recognise there's no argument from policing that it's it's not a place we want to be in, either for the person or our own staff, or the fact that actually those staff ought to be out doing other things, fixing things. But as I say, the safeguarding of the person comes first, and it's up to us then to work in partnership with our mental health trust and local authority colleagues to make that situation improve.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. What we do, what I think is a really good idea is, what we could do is monitor this, and if we've got major issues with particular trusts, that we can keep an eye on that and then report back here where that's happening, because obviously you've got your own influence in your localities, and maybe you can bring that influence to bear where you are, because we do want to be holding mental health trusts to account for delivery of this target.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have a question. You mentioned the trauma-informed approach, which I understand, and how as I understand it, it's a strengths-based approach, which seeks to understand and respond to the impact of trauma on people's lives, and obviously that is a good thing. But I wasn't entirely clear in the report when I reread it, thinking about this, what the plan, how the plan will deliver on this.
Yeah, so there is actually a training programme for all police officers being rolled out. I think it's been targeted at response staff initially, and you might know that the VRU is co-hosting a member of the Integrated Care Board member of staff, a woman called Emmeline Irving, who is is leading on trauma resilience across the whole of West Yorkshire, so not just with policing or health, but across all systems, across all partners. And lots of people have signed up to be trained in a trauma-informed approach and also to train their own organisations. In fact, I'm the chair of the board, and we've got a meeting this afternoon. So that's the body that oversees the training, not just of policing, but across the whole of West Yorkshire. And there's really positive conversations taking place with West Yorkshire Police about rolling that out. But the training has already started, as I said, with the response staff, and it will continue for the life of the board, which is funded for 3 years, and but I think we're 18 months in now, so hopefully that will continue beyond the 3 years. Obviously, we'll come back and tell you if that isn't the case. As far as I'm aware, the training's gone down really, really well and continues to be delivered.
Yeah. No, I second that, and I suppose the trauma-informed training impacts not just on mental health but on lots of different issues that policing officers, often quite young in service, have to deal with day in, day out. So that's, you know, impacted across the whole range of situations that they deal with. So, yeah.
It's not just about trauma of the people that they're encountering, arresting, it's about their own trauma as well and how they manage that.
Of course, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's very reassuring. You had a generic question about this, Mr. Lane.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of it, Alison, actually. I suppose when you read through the papers, you know, pressure on the health service, pressure on people within the force, within the NHS, huge demand coming at it, which there has been for years, isn't it? Particular pressure from the county and as well. And I suppose it's, you know, how can you reassure yourself that you at least prioritise the difficulties might be within that, that you're probably not going to meet all of these targets that you'd like to, but you know, what mechanisms have you got in place to kind of the check and balance that you can at least meet the priority areas?
So obviously we've got the metrics in the plan, which are our priority areas that we report back to you and report back to the public. In terms of mental health of police, it's a regular agenda item in the COM, which anyone can watch because it's live streamed and then it's on YouTube. Also, I discuss mental health with the Federation, with the trade unions. I meet them all regularly, and mental health is an issue that we discuss. But we also talk about mental health of the people that we come into contact with via our victims and witnesses group, which is a subgroup of the local criminal justice board, which I also chair, and then we've got other governance arrangements which pick up vulnerable people, safeguarding matters that we also ensure that the mental health of the people the police are encountering is understood. But also it's about how are we working with our partners to ensure that they're taking their responsibility, and we know that actually they're not. So that's an ongoing conversation. Obviously, the Mayor's got the power to convene, and it might be that at some point she has to convene the Chief Executive of all mental health trusts. I've actually met and spoken to Rob Webster, who's the Chief Executive of the ICS, to talk about some of these issues. I made him aware of some of the risks that we're facing, and that's why they're co-funding Emmeline's post, so that priority is one that's shared. But it's a major issue, and it's not just an issue for policing, it's an issue for all blue light and other services. But we all have to work together to make sure that we're not firefighting, but we're strategic, we've got long-term plans, and we're calm when the pressure hits, which is hitting every day, I have to say. But yeah, I mean, I just want to take the hat off to police working under the circumstances they're working.
Very, very difficult. I mean, and I think the relationship with the integrated care board is really useful for them, because, as we've seen before that, you know, in parts of West Yorkshire, the services provided by Swift, and other parts could be by Bradford Care.
Yeah.
And clearly they've got different operating ways, probably historical. So the ICB is a good opportunity to look at that in the round, and maybe push forward on some of the partnership working, so it's a more equal spread of the coverage across the whole patch.
Yeah, and absolutely, and there's lots of activity taking place about, for example, crisis. people in crisis and A&E attendance, and there's a lot of operational meetings taking place where police are involved with third sector, with the NHS bodies or the blue light partners. They're taking place on a regular basis about enhancing the services currently being delivered, working better, trying to find money nationally to bring back new investment, and that's been going on for years. And we continue to focus on mental health as a priority, but ultimately, we are doing the very best we can with limited and reducing resources, not just for us in policing, but also all the other partners. And of course, COVID and lockdown has just exacerbated that.
I think as well, from a practical point of view, Mr. Lake, to sort of address some of that, ultimately these decisions fall to either the staff who are attending an incident or sergeants and inspectors who are having to make those really difficult decisions about things that we should attend and shouldn't. And sometimes that is about not being the correct resource to attend and actually exacerbating things for the individual who is in crisis, because for some people, the last thing that they want to see is a police officer in uniform. That makes things worse. It sometimes, as I say, exacerbates the situation. The last thing we want is for those people to end up, in custody, because that is just an extra issue for them. So, really difficult decisions, I think, for those police officers to be making on a day-to-day basis.
And can I just offer some further reassurance? The Chief Constable did meet with Swift earlier this week to try and identify some of our joint challenges and how we can progress them. So, and it was Swift that reached out to us, which is really a positive step.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that full answer. In our pre-meeting, we didn't identify any other questions we wanted to ask about this particular report, unless anything that anyone's heard has given rise to wishing to say more. No? Okay, well, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the performance management report.
Thank you very much. So this report looks at the second quarter of the year, July to September, and most of the performance metrics are on a rolling 12-month basis and compared to the 12-month before. Obviously, they're under the 4 headings that make up the files, supporting victims and witnesses, keeping people safe in places, and responding to multiple and complex needs. So, very reminder, the deputy needs to go at 11. I won't say any more. I'll let you ask your questions, because obviously Catherine might have some further insights that I don't.
Okay, thank you. Right, Trevor, you had some questions on this one.
Yeah, it's a specific one around on cybercrime, which was 3.2.2 on there's a reference in there around the data as appendix 2, and then a comment about 2.2.3, looking at West Yorkshire vicinity to its neighbours. And as I missed it, I couldn't find anything in the appendix that showed me neighbours or most similar forces. So I think it sort of widens up into a generic comment about sometimes it's difficult in isolation to look at the forces figures, because how does that compare against others? And I think in that particular, because it makes reference there, it sort of brought it home. So is it possible to get some most similar force comparisons that we can have a look at just to see?
You'll be very happy to know that Wendy and I, and I'm sure the force too, we get access to all the Power BI data. So this is a new innovation from the Home Office. We've had access for about 9 months. Not only do we get information about West Yorkshire, we get information about the whole of the 43. I don't think we get BTB. But anyway, we get all the 43 forces, and we can cut it and dice it any way we like. So absolutely we can get that information. And I say we, I mean Neil and Linda. So yeah, anything you want. And again, I will reiterate, if anyone wants to be the performance lead, wants to work with Neil and Wendy about how you would appreciate this data being presented, or any particular questions, we would love to have that conversation with any of you and have that working relationship on an ongoing basis with any of you, because obviously we think we know what you want and we don't always get it right, so please do tell us.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we have an action and if we can get some, perhaps a little table on some of the key metrics, just whichever you choose on those similar forces. I mean, it used to be West Midlands years ago and Lancashire, I think, didn't it? And
We've got a specific table of most of the forces that, another 7 forces that we compared against all the time for similar demographics, so yeah.
So we'll work with West Yorkshire Police on that to make sure we get the data that is across the spectrum that we think you might want.
We do also tend to change slightly, so the police have what they call their most similar forces, but of course now we're a mayoral combined authority. We do like to compare with other mayors as well, because it does add a different dimension to it. But it does include West Midlands will be one that's included, as well as GMP. But Merseyside isn't on the police's, but it's a mayoral authority, so
we can
we've
get
got these two, so we can get that. So
very exciting. I don't always understand it, I have to say, but it is when you do, so that's what matters, and so does Neil. So yeah, it's very exciting to get access to all this data.
Thank you.
Okay, does that cover the things you wanted to bring up? Great, thank you. Looking at the reduction in the number of young people entering the criminal justice service for the first time. Nicole, you have a question about this?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, point 4.4.2 on page 25, where it says currently there has been an increase in adult offenders, but the number of young offenders, people, is decreasing. Can you just tell us a bit about why that might be? In the pre-meet, we had a chat about it. And could it be around the police are protecting more, or could it be the different settings, as in young offenders are in an educational setting? Could you just sort of...
Happily, I've got Wendy next to me, and she's got an answer.
So the reducing reoffending figures are slightly different to all the others in that we have to leave a year after the figures before, so we can see if the offending is reduced in that year. So what we're looking at is, if you think back a year ago, when we were looking at figures, we were comparing it with the crimes that were happening during the pandemic. So what we saw in the pandemic was that the number of, with less people out, that sort of thing, we saw the numbers of crimes that young people were likely to commit, ASB-linked crimes, that sort of low-level offending, were not happening because they were not out. Whereas what we did see was an increase in drug offences, that sort of thing, because it was more obvious the people that were dealing, and those tended to be adults. So we're now seeing the knock-on effect of that. So, but I don't want to dismiss the fact that the VRU, one of their key metrics is to reduce young people in offending. So at the same time as that is happening, we also have the work of the VRU working with young people to keep them away from offending. And Alison can tell you of the different places she's been that are doing really fantastic work with these young people to keep them away from the criminal justice system. Yeah. So I think that these two things have combined together. So we're seeing, so that's why we're seeing that reduction. But you have to take your mind back to a year ago and think of what was happening then.
Yeah. And also, if you look at the work of the BRU, we are seeing reductions across a series of areas, so robbery with knife, for example, homicides of under 25-year-olds, presentations, hospital for under 25-year-olds, all those are going down, which is obviously, we think, a direct result of the brilliant work of the Violence Reduction Unit and Genlock, because they do work really closely together.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I have a question which we did look at briefly in our discussion before. On page 28, Appendix 2, which relates to cybercrime, which of course is going up all the time. I've noticed that in the individual victims data, there's a breakdown of the age of those who are reporting this, and also the gender. and this is quite disproportionate. Men are reporting 30%, female women 48%. And given the nature of under the crime codes reported by individuals, one of it is hacking of social media and email, another is malware, spyware, and personal hacking. Now, I did wonder whether there was a correlation here, possibly, between women being stalked or coercively controlled in a domestic abuse situation and this rise, and whether that might account for this disproportionate number of women apparently being targeted in cybercrime situations, and whether any work has been or could be done about that to see whether that is in fact the case.
Yeah, and when you raised it in our pre-brief, I thought it was a brilliant question, which I thought the police were best suited to answer. Because I think the answer is probably we don't know, and that we need to go off and look into the detail of it and come back to you. But I want to give you the opportunity to say that.
Yeah. I think it is a really good question, actually. My sense would be, I don't think a big proportion of it will be that, but I might be entirely wrong about that. I think there's such a myriad of things that cybercrime encompasses around the online fraud, the online, the purchasing of stuff online, the social media stuff, the fraud around the monetary aspects, etc., etc. So there'll be a lot in there, I would imagine, quite aside from those top areas that were mentioned in the report. But yeah, I think that's something that we need to go away and have a look at. I don't have an answer now, but we can get it.
I think, yeah, thank you. Yes, because it could just be that women do more shopping online. I don't know if that's true, but that could be the case.
Well, I do a lot of shopping online.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's the case. But I think it's always worth investigating these things. And if they're given the stalking prevention strategy and everything, which is a really, really good thing and definitely needs to happen, if there is that sort of link. Maureen?
Thank you. Going back onto that, with it being a lot of the females, is there any particular age group that relates to? For cybercrime, is it the older end?
Well, we can ask the police to do a proper profile, which will break that down. It's a lot of work, so it won't be quick. It might be 3 to 6 months before we can get that level of detail, but we can definitely ask for it.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that myself, because myself and the sisters have actually been, somebody's tried to scam us this week. So yeah, and it's just made me think we were selling something online, and the person got in touch with us, and I went scouting around looking for their profile on Facebook, and I thought that is a fake profile.
Well, yeah, obviously Hercule Poirot lives together.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, do they target people that are probably not that savvy and things like that, and the age group?
Good question. So we'll take that away and see what we can do.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, that's a good point. Thanks. And I think that covers all the questions that we wish to ask about performance.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Because we have a minute, if I can just ask a supplementary. At the bottom of page 6, there's a comment of 1.15 about increasing trajectory of the satisfaction. This is now leveling, showing a more positive position. It's positive in that it's not declining. But it's still down where it was, and there's nothing really in the narrative to say whether you think is that a general thing, that it's going to be people's attitudes to public services as we come out of COVID. Is it a specific thing for Yorkshire or Force? Is it something that's a new level you're going to be kind of looking at, or do you think we'll get back to sort of 2019?
If I'd read all Wendy's notes, I would have talked about the satisfaction, because she does point it out as something that's obviously concerning in the notes. except for domestic abuse, which of course satisfaction has gone up, and I'd like to think that's because of all the brilliant work that we've been doing alongside West Yorkshire Police on violence against women and girls and the smart water and all the rest of it. Obviously it's a national picture that satisfaction is decreased, and I think that that's about a lot of things. You know, the murder of Sarah Everard is the first thing that comes to mind, but there's obviously lots of other things that happened nationally that have massively decreased trust, whether that's permanent or temporary. You know, there are lots of conversations at the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners about trust and confidence. In fact, the last APCC National Police Chiefs Council summit that we had in October was all about trust and confidence again. That's the third one. So lots of conversations about it. Yeah.
So previously, you probably remember that this sort of satisfaction, we could do national comparisons. For that, we used the Crime Survey of England and Wales and the satisfaction with the police. So the Crime Survey of England and Wales in the pandemic changed to a telephone survey, and the only data that comes out from it now is national data. So we could include that, but we can't, we haven't got it, it's not comparable with this data. So the data that we've got here is from West Yorkshire Police, where they telephone survey people who have actually been victims of crime, whereas the Crime Survey of England and Wales is a generic survey. Now, this used to be, going back a bit even further, this used to be something that was mandated, but the government stopped mandating this survey, but West Yorkshire Police decided they would continue with it so that they could understand what was happening with victims. So I think they should be commended for continuing with it, and they have increased the people who are surveyed. So it used to be just things like burglary victims, that sort of thing, who were surveyed. We've heard about domestic abuse. We've got hate crime victims now included, and ASB incidents are included. So it's a broad survey, whereas the Crime Survey of England and Wales is not as broad. So just a few points there. You might think, why can't we have a comparison? There is no comparison for this at the moment. But they are looking at the Crime Survey of England and Wales and looking at it further, and the government are looking at a survey as well, but whether that will come down to our force level, we're not sure.
So, I mean, not wanting to put anybody on the spot, you know, is that going to be a new level, or do we think it's something that might be able to go back up? But clearly, from what you're saying from the National Association meetings, it's obviously a big agenda topic and probably don't know the answer.
Yeah, and hopefully it will go up, because all the work that we're doing, so the Mayor's Office, for example, every piece of work we do, we're trying to co-produce that with the public. You know, I did message the Mayor yesterday. This is all about connecting with the public and giving them confidence about what is possible, but also being really brutally honest about where the challenges are. And obviously all the work that we do with the police around violence against women and girls is about improving the response to victims. We're just about to, we're working now on our victims and witness strategy, which hopefully will be ready in a few months' time for first consultation. And again, that's all about having a different conversation with victims and witnesses, improving their confidence in policing. So everything we do is about making better connections with our communities, increasing their assurance about what the police are doing, but working alongside policing so that the training that they're giving the officers and staff is improving all the time, taking on board the feedback that we're getting from the public about the areas of deficit, and always checking in that we're making improvement and what more can we do, because we acknowledge absolutely that you can't please all the people all the time, and sometimes, with police, you're always on the back foot, so it's a very difficult job to do, but I think it is possible to increase that confidence, but obviously we have to do it together.
Yeah, so I mean that's really encouraging to hear that. So I think what you're saying, given all that work, we could expect to see an increase in that.
Yeah, and for example, the women and girls work that we're doing, I don't know if it's tangible in any way. I think the domestic abuse satisfaction levels are probably an indication of the increased trust and confidence that women in West Yorkshire have for policing, and all the work that the police have done establishing the new scrutiny arrangements for the violence and women and girls stuff. But I think So when we launched the report 2 weeks ago, there were 160 people in the room, and the love that was being shown both to the police, both to the mayor and myself about the work that we're doing and the focus on women and girls, it was overwhelming. I mean, I nearly cried. It was so unexpected, but people said they felt heard. People said that women and girls was finally, an important topic. So there was definitely a groundswell of opinion that things were changing in West Yorkshire, and that was really, heartwarming, really.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, I noticed that as well. That's really good. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Well, we have finished with the performance report. Thank you very much. We can move on to the commissioning strategy, where we do. Thank you for this. It's interesting to see it. We do have some questions around it, and I'll start with your question, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. Is there anything you want to say?
Yeah,
Oh,
just to say,
sorry, I'm sorry. Did you want to introduce it?
Yeah, I'll just say a couple of words. Julia Clough, who's head of commissioning in our office, is here to answer any specific questions. But just to say, this is a consultation document. It's at this stage, it's in draft. Anything can change depending on your feedback, and we hope you'll give us some feedback. But I really want you to focus on our commissioning intentions, which I hope speak to the commitments that Tracy and I have been making since we came into office, that we value the third sector here, the voluntary community sector here in West Yorkshire. We know that they're a massive part of the solution. We want to invest in their sustainability, and we understand that only by working in partnership with them can we truly reach those communities where that trust and confidence we've already spoken about is less good, and we want to work really productively with all our partners, including VCSE partners, to improve the services that are given to the people of West Yorkshire. So that's at the heart of this commissioning strategy, and hopefully that comes through.
Thank you, Alison, and I think it did, definitely. And I know we have got some comments and feedback more generally that we'll make sure you get directly. But just one of the things that interested me was, as a result of the economic downturn and the current uncertain funding landscape, are there any risks that have been identified with regard to the Mayor's proposals around commissioning moving forward?
So, not for the core funding, and we secured 3-year funding arrangements for the vast majority of the commissioning that we currently undertake. There's been some additional funding that we've got this year, so £235,000 that we're not secure about, because obviously it was given to us as an addition to our core funding, and we discussed this at our executive on Wednesday about going forward how we communicate with our providers around that money, and a couple of different options that we're going to take to the Mayor. But if that money is recurrent, which we've got everything across it will be recurrent, we're pretty much, we think, secure for the next 2.5 years, because we're half a year into the 3-year deal. But obviously, we've got a new Chancellor, and things that we felt were secure some weeks ago may not be secure. But as things stand today, we've not been told that, for example, the VIU funding's been reduced. We've not been told that any of the home office land is being reduced. So on the face value of what we've been told, we think that this commissioning strategy is as written.
I think the only risk really does sit with our providers, in that what we got this year for our grants, we might not get at the same level for the next couple of years. Their costs are going up. The grant hasn't gone up, other than this year we're waiting for a provisional uplift coming. So I think that's what we're working really close with our providers on that.
Yeah, and we have been able to find some additional pots in some cases under some of our arrangements to offer uplifts, cost of living uplifts to some of our partners, and and every time the Home Office rings us up and says, oh, we've got a bit of extra money, will you take it? Yes, only if we can use it to augment the current contracts to mitigate some of the cost of living crisis impacts. And sometimes we've said yes, and sometimes we've said no.
Thank you. I'm obviously a long-standing interest in commissioning and this area. What do you think are the fundamental differences between the commissioning strategy now as to what you had previously?
So I don't, well, first of all, I think what we had previously was not as grounded in, first of all, values, as this is, but also this is located in a legal framework in a much stronger way, much more robust way than previously, in my view, and that's partly because we're part of the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and obviously we've had to work alongside them and meet the higher standard, because it was a higher standard working not as an OPCC but as part of local government generally. But I think that this sets out our, not that we've broken any rules before obviously, but the many more layers of complexity being part of West Yorkshire Combined Authority that this strategy encompasses. I think it's about, we've been really clear about our intentions, really clear about the long-term 3-year deal that we want to deliver, and I think that it's been co-produced, so the not just our intentions, but the way that we're going to do stuff has been co-produced with providers, and I don't think that happened in the past. We didn't have those conversations. It was a big power over before, I think, whereas this is much more power with.
Thank you.
I don't know if Julia wants to add.
No, perfectly said, thank you.
Okay. Did you want to add anything to this?
It's broadly answered what I was interested in, but do you think there's been any substantial changes in themes or focus from previous statements in that respect?
I mean, I'd have to rely on Julia.
Yeah, I think some of the way in which our funding comes to us is targeted in different areas. We know that there has been a lot of focus around domestic abuse and sexual violence. That generates funding streams, so that's a focused area for us. But I think what we've had the opportunity to do is to focus this particular strategy very much aligned to the Mayor's Police and Crime Plan, which again was co-produced with communities in West Yorkshire. The tone feels right. The co-design events that we had with providers, we've even had openly commented and complimented on in recent events, so they're very much engaged with it. But some of our commissioning approaches are steered by the funding that we can access. We're not the funding for all that's going on in West Yorkshire, so we are steered in that way. I think what this commissioning strategy does is it gives us the opportunity to make that so it's suitable for West Yorkshire.
So in some ways you dictated by this, as you said, funding streams at the table, and then it's about how you engage and shape.
Yeah, it's how we make that work, but I think also with the close working with our providers, we're also seeing our increased influence back up to central government to help shape those funding streams.
Excellent. Thank you.
And I should also add that one of the things that's in this commissioning strategy that wasn't formally a focus of the work that Julie did is that we recognise that we're not the only gaming town, and so we've explicitly said that we would be prepared to work with BCSE or other partners in their bids, that we would be junior players in their bids, that where we've got opportunity to bid for things, we don't have to be the lead. We can share that lead or give that lead to a more appropriate partner, and that we don't want to be we say it's got to be like this. We want partners to enhance the work that they're doing for the citizens of West Yorkshire, and if we can help them to get that money, or we can help them to increase the amounts of money that they're getting, that's how we're coming at it, and that's completely different to how it's been in the past.
So focus on outcomes really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Trevor, you had a question on HSC and governance and performance models.
Yeah, I mean, it's a generic question. First of all, I'm going to pick up my people who are in the health sector. We are using extremely well. That's a really good partnership work. A general comment on page 16 about the governance and performance monitoring. And I think it might just be the way it's written. I always get nervous when I say a standard approach will be taken wherever possible. So it implies it might be and I suppose the question for me is, what assurance can we have that the suitability of the organisations that you're dealing with, the robustness of your checking before the funding is given.
I mean, mean, obviously I was a third-party provider for many years, so I know how robust the checks were, and having to complete pre-qualification questionnaires and show 3 years accounts and all that sort of stuff. So I'll let Julia answer about what specifically happens in police and crime.
Yeah, certainly. So I think the standard approach, it may be the way it's written, so I'll have a review of that. We do try and use it where possible so that we don't overcomplicate how we are allocating funding. It comes in very complex ways to us. We try to deal with the complexity, standardise as much as possible for that provider. With regards to due diligence, we do have a robust due diligence even for the smallest of grants. And we certainly have checks and balances in place where we may not have worked with a provider before. We've had feedback from funding bodies such as the Ministry of Justice that our due diligence is meeting well above their requirements, really. So we are able to do that, and also being part of the combined authority, we have that additional capacity around that due diligence as well. It's standard there for procurement in EU procurement law, we know that, but it's really important that we do it for the smaller elements of grants because they do form a large part of our funding. So we do ensure that that's undertaken.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Unless there are any more questions from anybody, then thank you very much for this.
Yeah, I look forward to getting the other comments.
Yes, there's some comments that I made in the pre-meeting around certain ways that things have been expressed and written that need a bit of tidying up, and I'll be looking forward to seeing the strategy in due course. So we move on now to the mid-term financial forecast, and Angela Taylor, as the Director of Corporate and Commercial Services for the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, I understand you're going to introduce this for us.
No, I'm going to introduce it.
You're going to
and
introduce
I'm
it.
going to answer any detailed questions.
And Angela's going to answer the questions.
Yeah, so obviously this is a regular update, and you all understand the situation that West Yorkshire Police are in, and so this won't be a surprise. Also, we've taken the liberty of also including the preset consultation letter that we want to send out, because previously we've not always been as timely, and so we've taken that on board and want to make sure that you're happy with the wording of the consultation letter that will go out. And just additionally to say that once we've got your comments, this consultation document will go out online, but we're also going to be sending out some written consultations so that we can maximise the number of people who can feedback. And also we've got a series, and I mean, so a series of very, very, very long, very comprehensive engagement strategy around this. So we're going to be going across the whole of the 5 districts of West Yorkshire. We're going to publish those venues, and we're hoping to consult with people face to face as well as relying on the online and mail responses, because we are really, really conscious of the cost of living crisis that we're all in, and we're really conscious that the public need to get assurance that the decisions that we're hoping you will make are in line with need, and that they can check and challenge through those face-to-face meetings. So, Angela.
Very good introduction, thank you. I think probably happy to take questions. I think just briefly would say, clearly we're following the pattern we've done in previous years, so you've had information about the medium-term financial strategy. It wasn't good last time we brought it. It's improved a little bit, but not clearly it's not recovered to where we'd like it to be, in common with everybody else who's trying to set budgets at the moment. The paper that you'll get back in February will be the usual paper with absolute full chapter and verse on all the detail, all the use of reserves. So that will be coming to you in February following the preset consultation. But happy to take questions, and I suppose also give you reassurance that we continue to try to close that gap, working very closely with West Yorkshire Police to bring that initial million down to 37 million. There is still a gap to close for next year and beyond. Final point I've probably added, obviously we're waiting for confirmation of settlement. I'm expecting that hopefully the week after next. We're hoping there's nothing in there that we're not expecting, but we don't know what's in there till we see it. So there's still a level of risk in our assumptions and calculations.
Okay, thank you for that. We do have some questions indeed, and I'll start with Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, page 8 of 14 mentions recruitment and training 245 new police officers. And I must just say this is a question from my colleague Andrew and Carter, who can't be with us. So the budget proposal up to end of this financial year is 345 PCs. The Home Office, the Majesty's Government's, the PUP, Police Uplift Programme, should provide 825. Is that 825 on top of the 345? How many are we really going to get, and what is the mayor's end of the final number?
So shall I answer this question? You definitely will get your uplift numbers. We've committed to delivery of the uplift numbers, and so this is only this last 12 months. The recruitment for the next tranche is an ongoing process. It's taken place. There are people in training now, so you'll definitely get the uplift numbers that have been promised, and the Chief Constable has written, and the Mayor has written to the Home Office confirming that we will meet the target numbers.
Is that the 345?
The 820,
852, but that's over 3 years.
Yeah.
So this is this year's portion of that.
Right. So the 345 is a proportion of the 825?
850, 852.
It's not 345 and 825 over 3 years.
No, if only it was.
When she said this, I thought, oh, it was mighty optimistic to me. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll tell her about it.
Thank you. Trevor, you had a question about this.
Yeah, this is a big issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Starting from the statement of the year. £36 million projected shortfall for next year.
Yeah, and can I just say to you that the Chief Constable has met the Home Office, who have confirmed they will not give us the energy grant that they've given this year. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what the settlement is like through the settlement. You know what the maximum preset increase could be. So there isn't a great deal of opportunity to flex those figures. So I think really what we haven't got in the paper, and I understand that if you haven't got a final settlement yet, and there may or may not be something coming through in the case of no support, say for energy or inflation costs that you've heard of. It's going to be a major problem for you to be able to balance your budget and the outcomes in the plan. Simple as that, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think the and staff bit of the 750 police officers and staff, that's where we're going to be really challenged. The police officer numbers, you're going to get 750. But the staff numbers...
The only way you can save money here, where 80% of your costs are down to staff, payroll, should we say, be it police officers or staff. We've been here before over the last, going back to the austerity budget 5 years ago. The only way to reduce that number, if you've got other loose-bang schemes, is to reduce numbers.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So it's a direct contra to everything you're aiming to do. So no doubt we'll come back to February with a more detailed paper on how you're going to do or at least mitigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're asking the questions that you're asking us. We want to understand what the opportunities of the priority-based budgeting exercise are. We're looking at reserves, but obviously it's finance people talking to finance people, and ultimately none of us are magicians. I wish that Angela could also be, Angela the magnificent, who can create money where money does not exist. But that's not the case, and so we're in bleak times.
Yeah, I mean it's a serious risk for the delivery of the plan.
Yes.
As it stands at this stage, I don't see how it can be anything other, and I don't see where you can go. That will come back in February with a range of things that you put into place to address the shortfall. But it's going to impact you.
And that risk is now in our risk processes, and it's in the police's risk documentation. We recognise that we've known it for a few months, the inevitability of that. We had hoped that government would repeat the energy cap that has been given for this year. Everything was crossed. That's been dashed this week, which is outrageous, I have to say. I don't know what's going to happen to other public sector bodies. I'm sure that they'll be getting told imminently. But yeah, we're not just in crisis. You know, it's the worst of times for all of us, and I don't know how we're going to get through the other end. But hope is always there. We've got some very competent people, and we've got passion to succeed for the people of West Yorkshire. And so together, something will emerge that is doable, and we will come back with more information in February.
Okay, thank you. Francis Smith, you wanted to...
Thank you. Just continuing on that thing, and perhaps go into a little bit more detail. Obviously, if you're going to have an increase in headcount in frontline officers and a decrease somewhere else, that work will disappear. Does that mean that frontline officers are then having to pick up the slack and you're impacting operational effectiveness?
Yeah, great question. One that I've already asked. And clearly, the Chief Constable is responsible for decisions around deployment of resources. So the Chief Constable will table some suggested efficiencies, which I have no doubt include the removal of some of the vacancies that they currently hold for police staff vacancies. And then it'll be up to the Chief Constable to assure me, assure you, I'll show you through the Chief Constable about how the day-to-day operations of West Yorkshire Police will be covered. But absolutely, there will be activity that police are undertaking now that might be compromised in the future. There'll be activity that police staff are undertaking now that police officers will inevitably have to pick up, and we have to understand how the police and crime plan can be delivered under those circumstances.
It does kind of go a little bit, doesn't it, when you get these broad political statements and promises from incumbent governments saying they're going to increase frontline officers by 50,000 and then you're not able to deploy them effectively.
Exactly. And 200 million goes to PPE contracts and you can't even use the gowns. Okay. Well, let's not go there, but you know, let's not go there. Well, no, I can say it, but
yes. You wanted to come in?
I suppose it answers a little bit both of your points, is that as the Deputy Mayor says, we are working really closely. I think to offer some reassurance, I think we've been on the front foot with some of this. I mean, a lot of the deficit is around areas that we've got absolutely no control over and couldn't really have planned for. However, because we've got priority-based budgeting work ongoing, that is helping us to understand across the whole organisation lots of productivity and efficiency savings that we can make. That doesn't always mean cashable savings, but what it does mean is being able to deploy those resources back out to do the things that we want to do for the communities of West Yorkshire. And I think, you know, one of the important things is in controlling those vacancies that we've already got and minimising in-year spend and overtime, trying to not be knee-jerk about some of this to minimise the impact on our staff and also then, you know, the delivery of services and the police and crime plan. So there is a lot of work going on in the background to minimise the risk that you talk about, but you're absolutely right, it is a big risk for policing across the UK.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions from anybody based on what we've heard or anything else that you might have spotted in this report?
Moving away from the big piece and just a bit of a softer question really, just in terms of the consultation questions and just obviously all this data is going to be anonymised, isn't it?
Of course.
And that will be made clear to people. But I do just wonder about some of the questions and how is that information going to be used? What does it inform on the optional questions?
So I think quite a lot of these questions have been developed over years and years and years through conversation with the police and crime panel. And the panel like to know which areas of West Yorkshire, for example, have been consulted and have responded, so that we can see that it's not just Bradford who wants an uplift and Leeds who don't. They want to understand that across the board. But obviously we've got a GDPR, we've got an IG, Information Governance Officer, who make sure that the questions that we're asking are appropriate and that they don't breach our GDPR responsibilities. So any particular questions that you're worried about?
I'm not worried, I'm just wondering how some of the questions inform. Are you interested in sort of, you know, what your reach is in terms of...
Yeah, and obviously under the Equality Act, we have to ensure that we are reaching all the communities of West Yorkshire, and we use the ONS data set to ask the questions that we ask around.
Purely for those purposes? Purely for those purposes?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you'll see for recruitment, we'll ask the same questions because we want to make sure around the equality stuff, we want to make sure that we're meeting all the communities of West Yorkshire, because we've got an equality duty, which all local government bodies have, and we want to make sure that we're meeting that duty, and having the data is evidence that we're meeting that duty.
Thank you.
Okay.
A supplementary, just on the proposed consultation document, bit about your CRP investing, the points below that. I just wondered if you might be missing a trick by not saying investing in some of the new unit at Kirklees.
Sorry, could you speak up?
Yeah, sorry, the unit at Kirklees. You're missing a trick there. You've got 4 points, but there's also...
Oh, you mean the new police station?
Yeah, the new police station at Kirklees. There's also a significant investment in digital. I know you've got to balance it, but it just read a little bit. There's only kind of a few things there. I know there's lots of other things you're investing in doing that funding helps support and continues. It might just be worthwhile adding something.
Yeah, so we can definitely take that back. Clearly, we don't want to say that the money will be used for something that it won't be used for, because if that money's already been secured in another pot, we can't tell lies to the public. Yeah. So we'll understand what it is that we can say. So things that your money might be used for include.
I think there's probably a couple of other things in there you might be able to get in that might help strengthen the...
Acknowledging that the Chief Constable deploys his resources in the way that he sees fit. So he might say, yeah, you can get lost, I'm not doing it that, I'm doing it here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. This is a very small point, but on page 12 in the survey questions, it says, please can you indicate which district you live in? I would have thought that just please indicate which district you live in would be sufficient for that question. Research shows that the longer a question is, the more words on the page, the less likely it is that someone will complete it, and it seems to me that the words can you could be removed without any problem at all.
I think we're just trying to be very gentle and asking people to please.
But with the other questions, I'm always in favour of straightforwardness.
Okay, we'll take that back.
But yes, that's absolutely fine. And no, nothing else on this? Then thank you very much. We've dealt with that topic. So now we go on to any response that you may have, Deputy Mayor, to any current issues. Anything you want to highlight or raise with us?
Yeah, briefly, just remind everyone to please have a look at the Safety Women and Girls strategy. Hopefully it will meet your expectations, but we're really delighted that we launched this a couple of weeks back, and it's gone down really, really well. And as I said, we're now working on the Victims and Witnesses strategy, and my colleague Simon is leading on that. And we're going to take it to the local criminal justice board next week for the formal consultation there, and it will come here for consultation in due course. And we're really excited about that too. The safety of our parks across West Yorkshire launched yesterday, so you might remember that under Safer Streets 3, the Mayor was able to draw down considerable sums to work with 2 parks in each of the districts, but also to do some consultation with Leeds University around how safe women and girls felt in parks and what could be done differently, and what design changes could be introduced to make parks safer. So that research was launched yesterday, and hopefully it will now inform all our local authority partners and help them to make the improvements that are suggested within the document. But it's a really good read, just for information, even if you're not a design engineer for parks. And we're going to send that report to all our PCC colleagues up and down the country, because we think it's a really important piece of research that will help to inform the way that PCC's deputy mayors work with their local authorities. So really excited about that. Another brilliant thing to report is that the stalking service for victims in a domestic abuse situation has been launched. It's a service that the Mayor identified the need for right at the start of her term of office. We had a round table with stalking victims and recognised that this was a bit of a gap in West Yorkshire Police's armoury, even though they were really keen to do more. Actually, there wasn't a specialism within West Yorkshire Police, and they brilliantly came to the rescue in terms of their level of knowledge and expertise by setting up a dedicated stalking coordination team, which is literally just being recruited to, which is a fantastic response from West Yorkshire Police. But we also have set up now a stalking advocacy service, which is being delivered through victim support. It launched in October, and they've had over 200 referrals in the 2 months since it's been launched. So it's definitely something that was needed, and we hope that victims of stalking will get the service that they need. But also the feedback from that service will feed into the coordination team and will help to improve training, help to improve an understanding of the very, very complex nature of stalking. And the other thing I should add is that West Yorkshire Police have now commissioned Professor Jane Smith to inform their training as well about stalking and the 8 stages of the homicide timeline. So brilliant stuff happening, and that was, as I said, identified by the Mayor, funded by the Mayor, delivered by the Mayor. And then very finally, lots of nighttime economy initiatives happening, again funded through the Safer Streets funding, this time Safer Streets 4, and Bradford last week launched its night marshals, taxi marshals. And Asperangela has been launched a while ago, and I went to Bradford because I'm a patron of Bradford at night to show how safe Bradford is to go out in and to enjoy. But it's great that they're now using the resources that are funded by the Mayor to keep women and girls and everybody else in Bradford safe. So I just thought you'd like to know about those few things.
Thank you very much. If members of the public are interested in getting a copy of the strategy, how can they go about that?
So it's on our website. Anyone can download it, that's the word. But really, we haven't got many hard copies, but if anyone really wants one, if they want to email the office, then we can send it to them, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions on that from anybody? I've got a couple. No? The Parks report, which that's coming out, that's out already?
Yesterday, it came out
yesterday. And is that on paper, or is there hard copies of that, or is it all online?
No, so it's owned by Leeds University, it's online, but we can send you the online version on Monday. We'll get back to the office.
That would be extremely interesting. I'm sure all of us are interested, because parks in all of our areas were focused on for this, so we'd be very particularly interested in what was said about our parks, but in general what the conclusions are. And I'm very much looking forward to it myself. That would be terrific.
Yeah, and it's there now on Leeds University website.
And it's on the Leeds University website as well. But if you could send it.
Yeah, we'll send it.
Especially.
Ian's nodding, so that's great. It'll happen.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, Trevor, did you have a question on this? No. Just your glasses. Yes. Fine. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on then, having done that, to the published key decisions. To note that the information has been provided for us. I don't think anyone had a question on it, unless you want to highlight anything. No? And again, the agreed actions log.
Sorry, Chair, I mean,
oh, sorry.
I'm sure it's been picked up, but I think I'm sure that colleagues would agree that the extension of the Chief Counsel's contract was a good business decision for themselves.
We thought so.
Yes.
I'm sure we're delighted
Yes,
to
we are.
cover these services for a few years.
Thank you very much. And we did inform the chair before it went public. So, and
yes.
Yeah, there were no criticisms forthcoming, so we knew you'd be pleased.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And okay, anything else on that? Agreed actions log. There didn't seem to be any areas of concern outstanding. Anyone from the panel? Nothing that's occurred to anyone to ask? Or wishes to ask? No. Thank you. Thank you for providing this. And the forward agenda plan, we also have to note that there's no public meeting of the panel in January because members are having a private meeting to discuss our own issues, and we're going to be talking to the chairs of the community safety partnerships, which will be interesting. Looking back to the report, to the conference for panel members, which some of us attended, and having a discussion about that. And of course issues may arise which we then wish to feed back, but that's for us. And so that the next public meeting will be on the 3rd of February, which is the precept meeting. And so we'll be preparing for that as well.
Sorry, Chair, can I just,
yes.
It just says precept meeting, but clearly we'll get a full financial analysis where we can back that up. And I just wonder, given the change in the risk now of being able to deliver the plan in the light of financial terms, whether there should be something penciled in for later in the year, sort of a half-term, sort of half-year review at some point.
I think that's a very good idea.
We've got a few gaps in July and September, whether we
yes.
It's clearly going to be a massive issue going to the next
Yeah, yeah, we're not going to pretend that it isn't, absolutely.
So it might be prudent to build it in.
I agree with you. Yes. I think that's an excellent idea.
September's quite good, isn't it?
September's good. Yes. Right, so moving on, there have been, no complaints recorded since the last panel meeting, which is a satisfactory situation. We hope will continue. And under any other business, I believe there's been an award.
For West Yorkshire Police for the digital.
Oh, right.
Do you want to tell us about the award?
You probably know more than me about it.
Well, Wendy will.
So when we were talking about the cyber, just to mention that West Yorkshire Police have received, for their innovative practice, they've received a cyber award. So I can send you the details about it if you'd like.
Cyber award, you don't actually get it, it's just kind of...
No, it's for their innovative practice that they've received an award. So it was just because, you know, we've got this interest in the cyber crime at the moment. So, but I'll send you the details of what it was around.
Oh, yeah. And they also got another award for the Smart Water Initiative. So there's this thing called Five from the Floor. So Police and Crime Commissioners nationally, when we meet up at the summit, which happened in October, everyone buys to say that aren't we brilliant, this initiative is brilliant. And Lee Berry came and talked about the Smart Water Initiative, and we won hands down. So that was good.
Marvellous.
I'm very competitive.
That's a very positive, a very, very positive note. Yeah. Which any other business from anybody? No, well, it only remains for me to wish everyone who celebrates it an extremely happy Christmas and a really good New Year and a relaxing break for those of us who can have it, which I know is not a lot of members of the police force, particularly, but I hope things go as planned and are not too hectic and difficult, and that everyone gets a chance to relax and enjoy themselves. And please do, in the time remaining available to you when we finish this meeting, help yourselves to refreshments, mince pies, etc. I don't want to be carrying them all back to Leeds with me. So do tuck in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.